Regina is a reference librarian and an organic grower. She's been an avid gardener since age 8, and she founded SeedSower Farm in 2009. In 2017, she established Nassau County's first seed library at Glen Cove Public Library. And I know many of you are involved with seed libraries across Long Island at this point. So those have been really beneficial, particularly where we can get native seed into them. Regina also created programming and workshops on sustainable gardening. Along with her practical experience as an organic gardener, she's completed numerous courses in horticulture at Farmingdale State College. And this year she joined the Xerces Society as a volunteer ambassador, which title I love. I think that's just such a perfect title, where she works to advance invertebrate conservation by participating in community science, organizational tasks, and community engagement. Regina has co-presented at the New York Library Association and Long Island Library conferences, and she teaches sustainable gardening presentations across Long Island. So with that, I will turn it over to Regina. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Beth, and thank you so much, Rewild of Long Island, for inviting me tonight to discuss fireflies. This is my first time presenting, so I apologize if I'm a little choppy and maybe not so fluent in it, but I'm very excited about the topic, and I hope that you take some things tonight away and apply them in your own gardens and share this information with your friends. So as a volunteer, as a Xerces ambassador, I'm involved in outreach activities like this one to help them get the word out about what we need to do to help conserve our invertebrates, which include really just anything that doesn't have a backbone. So the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation is a science-based, not-for-profit that protects nature through conservation of invertebrates and their habitats. It was founded in 1971 by Dr. Robert Michael Pyle, and the Xerces Society is named after the Xerces blue butterfly, which was last seen flying in, I think, 1938, and when it extinct due to in the U.S. due to human activities. And it's a reminder of why we do what we do. We really depend on so many people to make what the Xerces Society does happen. It's supported by community members. If anybody is a member of the Xerces Society, we'd like to thank them today. And if you'd like to become a member, you can do that by going to our website there. It's xerces.org, donate. So we approach invertebrate conservation from multiple angles. They include scientific research, outreach, and education, and applied restoration and management activities, as well as advocating for conservation-minded policies. So amongst those things would be if a species is being determined as being threatened, we petition the petition to have them put on an endangered watch list, endangered species list, and that's all done by the Xerces Society, and oftentimes in conjunction with other organizations. So the 5 areas that we work in is endangered species conservation, pollinators and agricultural biodiversity, pesticide reduction, and community engagement. This last focus is where I've come in as an ambassador, where I spread the word about insects and where we can help to protect them. In this work, Xerces interacts and collaborates with diverse groups, including farmers, land managers, government agencies, corporations, and thousands of people who protect invertebrates in their neighborhoods. They work hard. The Xerces Society has an amazing, unbelievable publication library that's completely free. It's downloadable for free from their website. They have all kinds of guides, including habitat restoration installation guides, plant lists, monitoring protocols, species facts lists, and more. And as I mentioned, they're all available at the Xerces website, and it's xerces.org/publications. So let's dive into fireflies. Xerces first started looking at fireflies because they kept hearing about these anecdotal reports that there seemed to be fewer and fewer firefly sightings. This was surprising given the near universal love that people have for fireflies. And if you've ever had a chance to watch fireflies on a warm summer night, you know how magical they can be. They've long captured imagination of people, and they're reflected in our art, our literature, and in cultural traditions. They actually are also, their sightings, in certain times of the year, they actually spur some ecotourism in the United States and abroad. They're actually also ecologically important components of the community food web, both as predators and prey. They also are charismatic, diverse, and well-loved, making them the ideal insect to be as our poster insect for conservation. And if you're interested later, I can put into the chat a link to some of the different places you can go to see fireflies in their peak times, which is usually the end of June, beginning of July. The fireflies, which are called lightning bugs and glowworms, depending on what part of the country you're from, are neither flies, bugs, or worms. In fact, they are beetles, and they're in the order Coleoptera. And I'm terrible with the Latin, so I apologize in advance for any kind of mangling that will happen there. And they're in the family Lampreyridae. Beetles are distinguished by having the first pair of wings hardened and thickened, like you can see here on those upper images. And then those wings actually protect the flying wings, which stay folded safely underneath. So fireflies can be found in all parts of the United States. There are 173 species in the United States and Canada, and more than 2,200 species worldwide. You can see by this map, all the black dots are where sightings have occurred. And they can be found in every state except for Hawaii and all but one Canadian territory. They're found in a variety of habitats, from riparian woodlands to desert canyons. The key feature of all of these, of course, is moisture. You can see the different habitats that they are in by those boxes along the side. And so they can be anywhere, like in Colorado, Arizona, Maryland, and Florida. But the key feature, and this is really important, is that there's moisture available. So they're known for their light, but not all adult fireflies actually produce light. All three of these insects you see here are adult fireflies. And this kind of gets me because when I learned in entomology, was all adults have wings. Well, here's an exception. The firefly on the upper left there is the California pink glowworm, but that's an adult female. The one on the right is the one that we're probably most familiar with the flashing firefly, or known as the flashing firefly or lightning bug. This next image, as I mentioned, was the California pink glowworm on top. Oh, we just need to go back. Yeah, I know it looks like the same slide, but it's a little different. It's actually a flightless adult female, and she actually emits that glow to attract non-luminescent males. So there are males, of course, that fly around that will look for those lights to find that female and to mate. The males have really big eyes, so they can really spot them on the ground. And an example of a common firefly in New York is the common eastern firefly, or the Big Dipper firefly, and those are found in New York. There are many different species in New York, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you can find more information about those. And then others, like the dark firefly on the bottom of left, they don't light up at all. They are active during the day, and I've seen these all over the place. And they emit chemical pheromones to attract their mates. And you can find them on leaves, in trees, and on the bark of trees during the middle of the day. So if you ask me what a firefly looked like, I think we need to go to the next screen. This would probably be the best kind of image that you'd come up with. The truth is most fireflies actually spend quite a lot of time in their larval stage, from 10 months up to 2 years. And that means they're living in the ground. Fireflies go through 4 life stages. They start with an egg, become a larva, and that's the stage they're in for 10 months to 2 years, which is quite a long time. And then they become adults. Of course, they spend most of the time in the larval phase. And the egg, pupa, and adult phases don't really last more than for just a few weeks. And then you can see from these photos that they are diverse in the way they look. Oftentimes, they might be mistaken for a millipede with not enough legs, or perhaps roly-poly that hasn't rolled up. But they're segmented and are armored body parts, and they live amongst the leaves and on the soil. So adults aren't the only life stage that produce light. Even in diurnal dark fireflies, the eggs, larvae, and pupae all produce light as a warning signal, announcing that they are toxic and bad tasting to potential predators. So although not all adult fireflies produce light, all fireflies do produce light in their immature stages. So the larval stage is where fireflies carry out one of the most important roles in the ecosystem. They're predatory, and particularly they like soft-bodied insects like snails and slugs and earthworms. The one image on the far left almost looks like a slug to me. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, as a grub, I wouldn't be surprised if they also ate them, but that's not what I've been told. They basically inject slugs with a neurotoxin and then a digestive agent, and then they just kind of slurp them up. It's pretty gross. Their appetite for snails and slugs means that they provide valuable pest control to parts of certain types of farming systems like rice paddies in parts of Asia. So adults typically don't eat, with a few exceptions. They may be found nectaring on some flowers. And then there are some species of fireflies, Photurus females, will actually mimic their flash of other fireflies to eat them. So they'll attract the male over, and then they'll actually eat them. And the reason they do this is because they're ingesting the toxic compound that's called lucibagina, sorry, that other fireflies have as a way of protecting themselves and their offspring. So they kind of accumulate that toxin by eating the male. You'll also find fireflies, like I said, mentioned, sipping some flower nectar and sap from maple trees. But generally, they're not major pollinators like bees or moths, but they do have some pollen. They do move pollen from flower to flower. So the question is, if fireflies in trouble? It seems so, based on everybody I talk to. Many people say that they haven't seen as many as they have had in the past. So the general consensus is that they seems to be that they're not as abundant as they once were. And declines have been documented in some places. Here in the US, we lack a lot of the baseline data to really actually know what's going on. So that's one of the things that the Xerces Society does, is that they do enlist entomologists as well as citizen scientists to try to identify if there is an issue. And I'll talk a little bit more about that further down. So you've probably seen this article New York Times had put out back in, I guess, 2018. But there have been many headlines about how there's been a decline in insects in general, and fireflies are not an exception. Studies around the world are showing declines in diversity and abundance of insects in general. Although there's a lot we don't know, there is sufficient data to make us act now. So with the fireflies, we take what we know and we work to protect them, and continue to build our base of knowledge and adapt our approach as needed here at the Xerces Society. to really determine what we know about fireflies in the U.S., the Xerces partnered with New Mexico Biopark Society and other members of the International Union for Conservation of Nature Firefly Specialist Group in 2019 to assess the extinction rate of the 132 North American species. And they found that about a third of the assessed species are doing okay and are categorized as least concern, but about 14%, which is about 18 species, are threatened with extinction, and 2 species are near threatened. And then more than half are actually, the information we have is data deficient, which means we just don't even know. We don't know if they're okay or if they're not. But that's something that the Xerces Society is continuing to work with these other organizations. And there's ways for you to help with that too. So main reason why there's so much loss of what we think of fireflies is that there's habitat degradation and loss. And we can see that by just the level of building here, right here on Long Island, how quickly it's going. And of course, when we do that, we're fragmenting all of their habitat. Light pollution is a very big issue because these animals actually tend to be animals that come out at night, or they're active in the dusk or the dawn. Light pollution can really confuse them, and they can't find each other to actually reach each other and actually to reproduce. So so the largest threats are really habitat loss, light pollution, and pesticide use. And there are other threats like poor water quality, invasive species like fire ants and grasses, and just climate-induced drought and flooding. And so addressing these threats is not only will not only help us secure our firefly species population, but also that of native invertebrates. So habitat loss and degradation is considered one of the largest threats to most declining insect species worldwide. And it could take many forms, including commercial and residential development, water pollution, groundwater pumping, modification of waterways, and fragmentation. This photo shows a new development that occurred that was thought to be the largest known population, that actually supported the largest population of the Bethany Beach butterfly, Bethany Beach firefly. It's a rare and declining bioluminescent beetle, currently known only to inhabit that swath of coastal habitat along the Atlantic shore of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. But in September of this year, due to the efforts of the Xerces Society and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Bethany Beach firefly is the first firefly to receive protection under the Federal Endangered Species Act. So flashing fireflies and glowworms need dark nights, and really they're not the only ones. There's many moth populations and other nocturnal insects that use night to find each other and mate. More than 60% of invertebrates are nocturnal, which makes them more vulnerable to light pollution. And 3/4 of firefly species in the United States and Canada are nocturnal and crepuscular, which means they're active at dusk. And these species rely on bioluminescent courtship patterns to locate mates and do not use other visual or chemical cues. So because of this, flashing fireflies and glowworms are sensitive to light and use darkness as a cue to time their flashing behavior. So light from urbanization and infrastructure is a serious threat. And sky glow from urban areas at night can actually be seen from space. So this image on the left is actually just that sky glow that you can see if you were looking over a horizon. It's probably Los Angeles, I'm guessing. But if you look on the right, that is actually what it looks like from space. That is the light that is permeating into the sky. And you can just imagine just how bright that is in reality. Pesticides, including insecticides and herbicides, have been implicated in declines of many insect species, including fireflies. Fireflies can be exposed to pesticides by direct contact applications like drenching of the soil, also by runoff or consumption of eating a contaminated slug or snail. The pesticides can also degrade habitat and eliminate food sources for immature fireflies. Climate change can affect fireflies by flooding the habitat or desiccation due to drought, or indirectly through effects on their predators, competitors, and prey. Because firefly development depends on climate and local weather, environmental changes will likely affect their populations in many ways, including emergence times, species abundances, and species ranges. In addition to all of these threats, certain history traits may make some species more vulnerable than others. The flightless female glowworms aren't really able to move out of the way of any kind of encroaching threat. So they wind up becoming, we lose our population by losing those females that lay eggs. Ground disturbances, like walking on those sites, is one way to definitely hurt these animals. Some of the species require true dark for their mating displays, may be more impacted by light pollution, and species already in restricted ranges that depend on sort of small areas like mangroves or interdunal wetlands may have more pressures on them than species that are found in more widespread areas. So everything seems very overwhelming and perhaps dire, but there are ways you can help fireflies, and I'll talk about those going forward. So it's important to first understand that fireflies need basically these four things. They need moisture, which is going to prevent desiccation for them and their prey. Moisture is really, really important. They also need protection from pesticides and other negative impacts to their habitat. They need shelter. Leaf litter is really one of the best things that you can leave for your all invertebrates, really, but in particular fireflies. If they have some form of leaf litter or underground burrows, rocks, rotting logs, and native vegetation, that's going to help them at all stages. And of course, dark nights are really, really important for them to be able to find each other and to reproduce. So some of the ways that you can help to protect fireflies from further decline is by avoiding disturbing the ground. So if you have a large garden, try not to walk all over it, because many of these are living on the ground or just barely below the ground. You could provide habitat features that are important to them, reducing your light pollution. Contributing to community science is a great way to help fireflies and all invertebrates if you're so inclined. Educating others about the importance of those four things that they need, and just sharing the word with your neighbors and your friends. Just an example of how citizen science works is they have Xerces, in addition to the Firefly Atlas that they're working in conjunction with those other organizations. They do have something called the Bumblebee Atlas, and they were out this summer looking for this yellow-banded bumblebee, which has not been seen in 70 years, and they actually found it in South Dakota. So it might seem like a folly to go look for these insects and report them back, but scientists really do use this information to be able to understand what's going on. So leaving the leaves is one of the best things you can do. Really recommend that you leave the leaf litter where it is if possible, and if at the very least, try not to blow it. And if you are going to rake it, consider using it as a mulch. I'm a big fan of leaves. I can't say enough good things about them, and it breaks my heart to see everybody throw them out every year. They're also natural fertilizers, leaves. Leaving leaf litter and mulch supports other insects that overwinter in the leaf litter. And they might also find some other alternate prey in that leaf litter. And it also improves the moisture content of the soil, which we've discussed is really important to fireflies and their prey. So try not to leaf blow. If you're going to rake, try to rake them onto your beds as little as you can. And definitely do not try to mulch, do not chop them up. Mowing less often is also a great way to support fireflies. They like to have places to hide and find shelter. They also kind of perch up there to find each other. The flightless females will actually climb up a blade of grass or other areas of the garden, other pieces of vegetation, to be able to be seen a little bit better by the male. If you can avoid trampling the ground and mowing over too much, you'll actually spare those egg-laying females, because they spend most of their time on the ground. And if you do need to mow, consider setting your mower blades a little higher so that they don't affect those ground dwelling females. So they don't directly, fireflies do not directly feed on plants, but having a diverse planting of native plants is really important to firefly habitat. Grasses and forbs can provide shelter, as I mentioned, and also perching places. They also provide food sources for fireflies and other wildlife. Shrubs and trees are important too. Both provide additional shelter and perches, and both throw shade to some degree, which help keep the soil moist, and trees also help block light pollution. Different fireflies signal from different heights, so having a range of perching heights will help to support them. Several species of fireflies actually use tree bark to pupate or overwinter. Some species will actually use the same overwintering trees each year. They kind of like cuddle up into the different crevices of the tree bark, and that's where they'll stay. Plants also help retain moisture, enhancing the diversity will help support greater diversity of other insect species too, reducing pest outbreaks and providing more diverse food for other wildlife like birds. So leaving things a little bit messy is a great way to go. You know, we've become very sanitized here on Long Island. I noticed that nobody has a single leaf on their lawn, but they really do need those rotting logs and leaf litter and for shelter and signaling and hunting. So if you can allow a little bit of your yard to be a little unkempt, it's a little less work on your part, and it's also a help to the invertebrates that need that. Creating shade, so maybe if you have not a lot of sun and you think, oh, I can't really garden, if you create a shade garden, that will actually help keep some areas more moist, and will provide habitat for fireflies and their prey. So light pollution is really a big deal. So the suggestion is to try to reduce or eliminate lights at all possible. They need that light, that darkness, because that's how they find each other, as we mentioned. But of course, you can't create an unsafe situation for yourself. So using motion detector lights is really great. If you have path lighting that you can direct towards the ground, maybe on a motion sensor, that would be helpful to them. And you can also, if you have, and they tend to, they're not attracted to red lights. So if you have lights, you can add a inexpensive red filter to that light to prevent them from being attracted to it or confusing them. And you can also try using bulbs that are more amber colored. That's what I have read. And if you can close your curtains at night, that will also help because light does spill out of those windows as well. So whenever possible, if you can avoid using pesticides, I know I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure all of these things you guys are all doing already, but it's always good to be reminded. Whenever possible, try to avoid using pesticides. And if you do have to use them, try to use them in in just more limited ways. They really say don't use them unless it's going to be a health risk if you don't use them, or if it's going to create any kind of economic damage if you're a farmer, I suppose. Consider non-chemical alternatives and eliminate it entirely for just cosmetic use. And that's pretty much it on pesticides. So basically, we're just suggesting that you leave things a little untidy. This little scene here is a scene of fireflies at dusk, and it depicts some of the elements that fireflies need. They need a diversity of plants and canopy heights. They need leaf litter and underground burrows for shelter. They need tall grasses for perching and trees with deep furrowed bark for overwintering, and of course dark skies, free of light pollution, and a good water source. As I mentioned before, another great way to contribute to firefly conservation is to participate in community science. There's a lot we don't know about where different species occur and the times of year they're active, how abundant they are, or what factors may be impacting the populations. And this is where you can come in and really contribute to understanding firefly populations. And one way you can do this is through the Xerces Society Firefly Atlas. It's a collaborative effort to collect more data on species distributions, phenologies, habitat associations, and threats, particularly for species categorized as threatened or data deficient. And I did take a look at this Firefly Atlas. Boy, that is hard to say. This Firefly, I'm going to say lightning bug from now on. This Firefly Atlas the other day, and you can sort things. Well, actually, we'll go to the next slide. I think it talks about it a little bit more, but you can sort. Oh, I guess it doesn't do it here. Sorry, I must have watched a video where they did it. But you can sort by state, you can sort by state. You can sort by time of year. You can sort by the level of endangerment, if they're threatened, or if they're of least concern, or if there's data deficiency. So it's really pretty powerful, and I think you can download all that into a spreadsheet, and it's really helpful for you to be able to understand what species we have around here. Now I feel like I may have lost. Okay. So anyone in the US or Canada can contribute to the data to the Atlas by reporting your observations, or you can conduct a full survey if you're so inclined. The three focal regions that they're looking at right now is the Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, and the Southwest. These have the highest concentrations of data deficient and threatened firefly species that are home to the project's 13 focal species pictured in the left there. Having said that, there are lots of data deficient firefly species all across North America, and I did notice quite a few on the Atlas in New York. So it would be great to have any kind of contributions that you can give. Yes, that's that. Oh, here it is. I thought it was the next slide, and it wasn't. So the Firefly Species Atlas Fit Checklist. You can see here how you can sort it by all these different areas. It talks about their conservation needs. There's profiles on the different species and tips for photography and identification. You can download the species checklist for the United States and Canada, and you can filter those species, like as I mentioned, by genus, state, or province, or conservation status. And this can help us narrow down what species might be in your area. It It also provides data sheets and participant handbook to give you the best practices for going out and looking for fireflies. Just in a general way. I've never been to a big firefly show, but from what I understand, they really don't want you using any kind of lights so that you don't disturb them. You would use pesticide if you were going to put, because it is summertime and there are mosquitoes out just looking for a great free meal. They say that you should be putting your bug repellent on in the parking lot and not on the trail, where that would obviously affect those species. But there is a handbook that can give you all kinds of information on how to go about this in a really responsible way. So there are other firefly community science projects out there. The Western Firefly Project is gathering reports of flashing fireflies. This started in Utah through the Natural History Museum and includes all Western states. And then iNaturalist is also a popular place for sharing firefly observations. Unfortunately, you're going to probably take a picture of a firefly when it's not flashing, so that's going to make identification a little more difficult. But iNaturalist is a really good resource. So as you learn more about fireflies and what they need, we're hoping that you'll begin to advocate for them in your community and help educate others. And this can take many forms, from encouraging the creation or protection of firefly-friendly habitats to working with your municipality to pass pesticide and lighting policies that are friendly to fireflies. You can even start or join a local chapter of Dark Sky International. And I'm sure you'll be learning more about that on the upcoming event about light pollution. And you can just share information with your friends, families, and neighbors. So if you want to learn more about fireflies, there are several great books out there and guides. Lynn Faust's book provides an in-depth overview of fireflies of the eastern and central US, Canada. Sarah Lewis's book, Silent Sparks, introduces readers to science and wonder of fireflies and includes a brief guide to commonly encountered genera in North America. And in the West, Larry Bushman has drafted a digital field guide focused on species in Kansas, Colorado, and Arizona, but also extending to other Western states. So Xerces has worked with Firefly partners to develop a number of other resources related to fireflies, which are available at the Xerces Publications Library, as well as on the Firefly Atlas website. This includes a State of the Fireflies report, which summarizes their red list findings, as well as fact sheets, conservation guides, and species profiles. You can also, there are also firefly-related webinars and presentations, which can be found on the Xerces Society YouTube channel. So much information there. It's unreal how much information is out there. You can also stay informed by subscribing to the Bug Banter podcast. It comes out every week. It is a podcast where they explore the world of invertebrates and discover how to help those extraordinary animals. YouTube features, like I mentioned, webinars, videos, and a classroom series, community science, short courses, and more. It's really, really robust, and you could really go to school on that YouTube channel. Of course, you can also follow Xerces and its society and its work on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. I'm happy to try to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. That was great. And it was very comprehensive.
Yes. Thank you.
So yeah, we don't have any questions in the chat right now, but I have a couple of questions. So if people want to put something in the chat, feel free. We've heard and read that fireflies live in the leaf litter for 2 years before they come out and as an adult for 3 weeks or so. Is that Is that true? Is that supported by what you've heard
Yes,
from,
so-
you know, what Xerces is saying?
Yes, so it can be anywhere from 10 months to 2 years. So they do spend a lot of time in that larval stage, which is where they're doing the most benefit, of course, for any kind of pest control. If you have a slug problem or snail problems, that's where they're really voraciously eating those other animals. But yes, 10 months is the minimum and 2 years is the max.
Great. Yeah, so this time of year, we're talking about leave the leaves a lot. And so
Yes.
that's part of our argument for leaving the leaves.
Yeah, it's great. And I
Um,
mean, if you rake them into your beds, they stay there, right? So they're going to still support those insects, those larval stage for all that time, I imagine. You keep adding leaves, so.
mhm. And Dave LaMagna is asking, do you know how many species of fireflies are found on Long Island?
I do not. I went onto that Firefly Atlas and tried to see if I could sort it by New York, but it's unfortunately they have them grouped by region. Like they have all the states there, but you can't just choose New York. Maybe I wasn't looking well enough. I mean, it wasn't working perfectly for me, but I think I don't know how many are on Long Island. I can find out for you and let you know.
That would be great. I guess a couple of other things. Are there, I seem to think in some of your later things, it sort of implied that there were places you could go watch fireflies. Are there,
Yeah.
you know, like lists of where you could go do that on Long Island?
I don't know that we have it on Long Island, to be truthful. I don't think we're dark enough. I know that the Rocky Mountain State, the Rocky Mountain, it's the National Park, Rocky Mountain National Park has a big event every year. There's one up in Canada, in New Canaan, Connecticut. And you can go online. You have to make a reservation. But I don't think there are any on Long Island. I looked into that myself, and it looks like the closest one is going to be in Connecticut, in New Canaan, Connecticut.
All right. Dave Callahan was asking, are Espoma lawn products safe for fireflies?
Spoma is organic, but I guess it depends on the product, right? So I'm not sure what they put out apart from, I mean, I know I've seen blood meal and bone meal by Espoma. Do they have fertilizer? As long as you're not putting pesticides down or herbicides, I think it's okay. And I don't know what Espoma really has. Do they have a particular product that they're speaking about? I know they have blood meal and bone
David,
meal.
you could go off mute and ask if you would like.
Hi. Yeah, I'm thinking of the things for fertilizing the lawn. I know they have some things that I think suppress weeds early in the season.
So you're thinking, so it's like, oh, what is that called again? I forgot.
And so I'm thinking,
Like
obviously,
pre-emergent.
right, emergent. And I always think now I've moved away from using Scott's products because I think they're more chemically based to something like Espoma, which is supposed to be more organic. And as you say, I saw 30 years ago, I would see many more fireflies on the front lawn and fewer now. And that's obviously, I think, just, a long process of everyone's lawn now having a landscaper putting down his chemicals.
That's entirely possible. So I know they have, so the pre-emergent, I think, what is that? I forgot the product it actually is. I don't really know. I think as long as it's not a pesticide, a pre-emergent is kind of just suppressing those weeds from germinating. I don't think it's exactly the same, but I would have to ask, and I will be happy to ask. So this is a pre-emergent weed, right?
Right. And then any of the, they have all the other products to put out, to feed your lawn during the year.
Feed lawn. Okay. I'd have to ask. I don't really know. I think in particular, they're more looking at herbicides and insecticides.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be able to say, but I can find out.
Right, so I know like there are like the lawn products that will help kill off grubs, which are what I
Yeah, now
assume.
I don't think you want to kill off the grub. Well, I think I honestly believe that they would probably feed on grubs. I
Right.
would imagine.
Well, the fireflies probably would, but there
Yeah.
are lawn care products out there to kill off the grubs.
Right. And I'm sure if you're killing off the grubs, you might be killing off slugs and snails too. I don't
Yeah,
know,
right.
but any kind of pesticides, it would be detrimental to a firefly
Right. Okay. Good.
larva. Yeah. I'll find out though. I'll see if I can get that answer for you.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
That would be great. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I want to thank you very much, Regina. That was a
Oh,
great
thank you so much, Beth.
presentation.
Sorry about the technology.
There is a question.
Oh, yeah.
Can you, I think Nikia wants to know in moist area where, if fireflies are found in moist areas, where are they finding this habitat in residential yards? Because we do see them in backyards.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it has to be the right, I mean, they live on the soil or in leaf litter. So if you have an area of your yard where you're not having a lawn, I mean, I know people who have lawns have fireflies, and I think it must be because then must be managing them organically, because lawns can be moist, right? That's the important factor. But I would say that probably an area where there's leaves and moisture there from, you know, either you're watering other plants to keep those alive, but really any area that you have that's not going to be totally dried out. So leaves tend to keep the soil moist, obviously. So in your landscape, if you have a mixed border of herbaceous and woody plants, I would imagine that they would be there as long as you're not using pesticides and herbicides. And if you're covering them, if you're mulching with leaf litter and you're irrigating occasionally, I would imagine that that would be an ideal habitat.
All right. Well, thank you again, Regina. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I hope you found value out of this. The comments look great. And don't forget, we have upcoming events, particularly the Dark Skies one, which is really related to this as well.
I am very excited about that. What is the date of that? I want to get, is it next week or is it the 10th?
I think it's December 10th.
December 10th.
Yeah.
Great.
And you'll find
That
it on
sounds
our
great.
on our website in the events section.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much. I so appreciate the opportunity, and I hope you learned something and can make a little effort to kind of protect these beautiful insects that we find so magical.